Louise Bedford here, the money chick and the host of the Talking Trading podcast. Have you ever looked at your trading account and thought, I am smarter than this. Why am I not earning more money? You've read the books, you've studied the charts, you know what you should be doing, but somehow the results just don't reflect your potential. Today's episode is going to hit hard because we're going to explore the uncomfortable truth that being intelligent is not enough when it comes to trading success. I'm joined by psychologist and money mindset expert Linda Miller, and we are pulling back the curtain on why so many smart, capable traders stay broke or burned out. We're going to dig into why perfectionism and being overly analytical quietly kills profits, the surprising mindset blocks that are sabotaging your success, and how too much market advice might actually be wrecking your edge. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by noise, and if your brain is constantly spinning but your account isn't growing fast enough, then this episode will show you why and what to do about it. Let's get into it. Linda Miller, welcome to Talking Trading. I've been so looking forward to interviewing you. I want to kick off with a really pertinent question. You work with a lot of smart, driven investors and traders, which is fantastic. But why do you think intelligence alone doesn't translate to trading success?
Great question, Louise, and thank you for the beautiful introduction. Unfortunately, if you're smart, then that doesn't necessarily lead to success in the trading field. The way trading works is that emotional control and consistency under pressure are the things that will get you through more so than IQ. And there's research to actually back that up. What they've found is smarter investors often trade more but not better. And there was a study by University of California, which is almost the classic, I guess, in behavioural finance. And what they did was they analysed over 66,000 individual brokerage accounts, and they did that over a 6-year period. So, you see the ups and downs in the market and all those sorts of things. And what they found was the investors who traded most frequently actually earned about 6.5% less per year than the market average. And, that's not because they didn't have skill, it's because they couldn't stop tinkering. And when you're really intelligent, then there is that temptation to act. And that activity doesn't necessarily translate to performance. And I guess that's one of the clearest demonstrations that more action and more confidence can actually cost you returns.
And there is a difference between tinkering and making modifications to your plan. So yes. I think with my traders that have periodic reviews where it's either quarterly or maybe 6-monthly, and they look through their data, their results, and they compare that to their trading plan, and they make modifications, that's very different from thinking idea of the minute and I'll just change this and we'll see how it goes. Yeah,
very much so.
And you talk about the dangers of thinking too much. Goodness me, sometimes at 3 a.m. that is absolutely me. But people think too much when it comes to money, when it comes to their trading rules, when it comes to engaging with the market. So what are some of the more common mindset traps that traders fall into?
Look, there is that classic overthinking. You see it so often, and people kind of assume that if they analyse more, that they'll make better trades. But what actually happens is there's too much information coming in the end, and the more intelligent you are, the more information you tend to take on, and that can lead to analysis paralysis. And, people get stuck in this loop of what if I'm wrong, and never act, because, that aversion to loss is very strong in all of us. It's part of the human condition. And, so what happens is people are scared to lose. And we see this in the research. And psychologists call it, and I'm sure you've come across this yourself as a psychologist, maximizing mindset. So, you know, the need to make the best possible choice. And it's hard to find the best one. It's like trying to pick the peak of the market. It's impossible to do. But what maximizers tend to do is be then less satisfied and more regretful than people who just pick a decent option and move on. So, you know, if you're constantly refining and checking and comparing, we understand that that's your brain trying to protect you from regret, but it doesn't make you more profitable.
And it does feed into the concept of perfectionism as well.
Yes. Yes.
And different people are on a spectrum with this. They experience things differently. But I believe there is a link between that perfectionism drive and underperformance in trading. How does it play out in real life?
You know, people sometimes think that perfectionism is a strength because you're really going for the best, but it's a profit killer. And, you know, how that actually plays out in real life is you see traders who spend hours, you know, fine-tuning indicators or waiting for the perfect setup. And then by the time it arrives, the moment's gone and the mover's gone. So, you know, perfectionists end up experiencing more regret and less happiness because they never settle. They can never settle for good enough. And in the markets, as we know, good enough is usually the difference between getting paid and missing out. So if a person is a perfectionist, you know, try putting some limits on your analysis, you know, either time limits or rules, maybe saying, okay, once these 3 key conditions line up, I'm going to act. No more tweaking. I'm going to press the button. And even that single change can be absolutely life-changing, portfolio-changing.
I did something similar to this, actually. I've got a tool which is a spreadsheet which tells me how many shares to buy when I plug in the price and the ATR. And what I came up with is a rule that I'm not allowed to touch that spreadsheet unless my very next action is to go onto the brokerage platform and purchase the share. Now, that has worked gangbusters for me. That has been awesome because it's limited the amount of procrastination time in between analysis and action. What are your thoughts about little hacks, I guess, tricks like this for traders?
Look, it's really critical because, you know, once your brain hits overload, it starts confusing noise for signal. So if you've got some key conditions set up like that, you put your rules in place, then that really, it turns down the noise. It really does.
What about fun though? Like, for those of you that don't realise, Linda and I went to university together. So it is quite a while back now, but we both studied psychology. One of the things that I did back then, I do remember with one of the lecturers, I was getting a bit bored with psychology, to be open with you. And I thought, why don't we do an experiment on the lecturer? So I got several key friends in the lecture over time to whenever the lecturer moved over to the left, we smiled and nodded and took notes really vigorously. And when the lecturer moved over to the right, we all kind of looked distracted and looked away and we didn't really focus on what he was saying. And by a couple of weeks' time, we had trained this lecturer to give the entire lecture from the left of the theatre. Now, now, I have to say, it tickled my fancy. I think it engaged me again in psychology because I could see a practical link and it just amused me so much. So what about the role of fun with this? I think sometimes we get so serious. What's your thought on this?
Yeah. Look, I think when there's money involved and when people are serious about their portfolios, it's very easy to lose the fun. But trading needs to have an element of fun to keep you engaged, I think. I guess where people have lost the fun is when they then move into over-analysis. And it just takes all the joy out of it. And, at the other end of the spectrum, being too quick to press the button, I guess one way to put it, is fun, but then that can be gambling as well. So it's finding that happy medium where you know yourself and you can work out what are the rules, what are the triggers for yourself that will keep you on track, keep it enjoyable and profitable without leeching the joy from it.
Yes, and I think of the Angela Duckworth book, Grit. I love her work. One of the things that has really infiltrated our area, Linda, in psychology is grit and the importance of sticking to something. The thing is, though, a lot of people misinterpret Angela's work. They think it should be that you grind it out and you don't let yourself actually deviate from that goal. But actually, if we look at her work, what she's saying is that we should explore a passion first and foremost. We should love that area. We should be fascinated by it. It should seem almost effortless to research that area, and then grit comes into play.
Yes.
So I think that's with traders as well. You know, we don't want to see you hammering it out if spreadsheets aren't your thing, and if absolutely detailed analysis of data is not your thing. You may have trouble with making it your thing unless you've got a natural tendency towards that. Yeah. If you've got somebody whose natural skills don't necessarily combine well with the basic building blocks of trading, what do you do with them?
It's a really great question. Look, at the end of the day, investing is a little bit broader and allows you, I think, to find the right iteration of trading for yourself. The most important thing is knowing yourself and knowing if you're not a spreadsheet person and you're looking at a form of trading that requires you to be deep into the spreadsheets, into the detail, into the analysis, and it's not really your thing, then a more hands-off strategy is what is useful to explore. Traders, you know, your clients in particular are probably of a particular type. Perhaps if you can share with me, you know, how would you sum up your client base in that regard?
I think a lot of my people who instantly do very, very well come from a geology, an engineering, a medical background. But then there's also a subsection that do extremely well, but it takes them a little bit longer. So the first group are quite analytical in nature. They're quite focused in terms of numbers. They're quite used to detail. But the second group, I'm thinking of a particular trader that I trained. Her name was Anne, and she's passed away now. And this is why I feel like I can tell you her story too. So Anne was an artist. I'd go over to her house and she would show me the most beautiful Japanese blossoms, paintings, gorgeous, just absolutely awful with trading, okay? she just didn't click with it, but she wanted the results, and she knew for her daughter that she wanted to be able to pass on a legacy of financial literacy. So she had a very big reason why that was so clear to her. And after she got into candlesticks, which are, of course, red and green little soap operas of fascination on a chart, she really related with the colour. And so I tweaked that out of her. I hammed that up and I said, okay, we've got a war going on. Are the green guys winning or are the red guys winning? And she, with colour, with being an artist, saw it. Like, it was almost like I could spot the time where it penetrated into her heart and where she had that epiphany. And it was like seeing, you know, that The Matrix, you know, the movie The Matrix? Where the guy leans backwards and there's all this data going over the top of him and he can see the patterns. It was like that for Anne. It was so explosive. Her whole face lit up. And from that moment on, she used grit to get through the parts that she found difficult. And she became an exceptional trader. And when she actually did pass away, because you've got to remember, I've been doing this for 36 years now. So I've had like a lot of people that I've trained. When she finally did pass away, her daughter, she phoned me up and she said, I can't believe what mum has left me. The inheritance is huge. I don't even know what to do with it. And I was just so blissfully excited to see tangible evidence that you don't have to be instantly analytical in order to excel.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? It's about connecting with the person and helping the individual understand from their own framework, I guess. Their internal framework, and understanding, you know, them having that self-understanding of what makes them tick, so they can, and working with a coach who can bring that out of them and can understand, can see the bigger picture in that respect.
And perhaps making sure that we're very aligned with our own values. Like after I worked out that was her hot button, her daughter's financial awareness and being able to help provide for that. Well, she was an adult daughter, but, you know, that child in Anne's mind, you never lose your kids like that, do you? They're always your kids.
No, that's right.
I think once Anne really tapped into her values and made sure that her actions were in alignment with her values, it was a beautiful thing.
Yes, yes. I mean, having a vision of, you know, you need to reverse engineer what is it that you want to achieve, and that vision comes from your values, which in turn come from your heart, and that's intuitive. So, you know, as long as you are operating on a level where you're lining up your intuitive values with the steps and the actions which are going to help you achieve that vision, then you're off and running. You know, it's almost a foregone conclusion.
And it becomes so clear then too, because often we're so subject to market noise, the things that are not related to directly to our results, we get swayed by, like, what's Trump saying on the news? And what are these 5 talking heads on a panel that are wearing blue suits? What are they saying? They seem to be very clever. We get so swept away by all of the peripheral noise in the market. And I think that can be very difficult. What does market noise do to our brains?
Oh, look, you know, our brains are just not built for 24/7 market noise, and it's coming at us constantly. You know, every price ping, every headline, it spikes our stress hormones, especially cortisol. And, you know, there's been research done by Cambridge University that's found that traders' stress levels, their cortisol levels, actually shift with market volatility, and that in turn changes how much risk they took. So, you know, if you're constantly plugged in, then your brain is flipping between fight, flight, and freeze all the time, and that is exhausting. You know, how can people make solid decisions when your brain is actually exhausted or frozen? So one of the things that's really important, as well as reducing, you know, turning down that market noise by being discerning about who you listen to, when, and those sorts of things, actually schedule silence. You know, don't make trading decisions straight after a big win or a big loss. Literally let your chemistry settle first.
And that silence can be in the form of a pause before you take a trade to give you a chance to, okay, let's recalibrate and let's make sure that I've got everything organized. I mean, I remember one time, Linda, where I didn't give myself that silence and I sold double of what I actually owned, which is a big no-no. They don't like that. Yeah, you end up going net short and the broker gets very annoyed with you. So I always do a little routine before I actually hit the buy or the sell button where I just count to 3. I just count to 3. Yeah, it really does
Such a
help.
simple thing. It's such a simple thing, but, small hinges swing big doors.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm.
Can you walk us through a time when you had one of your people who needed a big mindset shift and they shifted that mindset block? Give me an example.
Look, the one that immediately comes to mind is a client of mine who was an engineer, and we've talked about people who are highly analytical. A quality like that is not a strength or a weakness. It just depends on the environment that quality is playing out in, whether it's a benefit or it's a drawback. So, Jamie was super smart, data driven, but he kept missing his trades because he was optimizing, he was tinkering with his system. And so we created a rule. Once there were 3 preset conditions that were all aligned, he had 60 seconds to act, and he had to set it on his Fitbit, 60 seconds to act or the trade was off. And, just that tiny constraint freed him from that perfectionism. And within a month, his consistency and his confidence actually went through the roof. And even though the data hadn't changed, his profit improved by over 37% just by doing that thing.
Oh, that's a beautiful project. I do know in America, because in the States, of course, you can do day trading and it can be really effective. But in Australia, all of the research suggests that day trading does not actually do well for anybody. We just don't have the access to the speed and the volume and the data that we require. But one of the things I know they do to train day traders in the States is for the banks where they've got their own trading platform, they make them do a certain huge number of trades per day, like 120 trades when they're training. Wow. Now, what that does, it seems to desensitize that initial inertia that we feel before we place the trade. So I think that's quite interesting. We've covered it from 2 different areas. One is to create a pause, to give yourself time to recalibrate. And the other is to be careful about too much of a delay, because that is also a sign of trader weakness.
Yes, yes. Again, it's finding that middle ground, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. Because really so many traders do feel stuck. They might have read books, they might have done courses, but their results don't reflect their efforts. What's going on beneath the surface?
I guess, Louise, what's going on beneath the surface is that there's a gap between knowing and doing. Because when we're under stress, what our brains default to is emotion. And so fear and loss aversion are the things that come up rather than focusing on what you know. And so even if you know the right play, your biology literally hijacks it. And so, that happens especially, and I guess when you talk about Anne, there's a synergy here in what we're talking about, that if you're running somebody else's strategy, not one that fits your own temperament, your unconscious mind will keep either ignoring it or fighting it. And so what you were able to do with Anne was help her see it from a way that fitted with her values and her temperament, and aligning their strategy with their psychology, especially, as we talked about, vision, but also understanding a person's risk profile. As a coach and as a trader yourself, understanding your risk profile is critical, because otherwise you're always fighting yourself.
It can feel that way, can't it? I can actually feel it in my body.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising.
Literally.
How we're sometimes our worst enemy, even though we do want these results so desperately. It's almost like if we want something too much, it blocks us from that scaffolding of achievement, of those basic building blocks that it takes to succeed. So that equanimity, that equilibrium that we need to reach, that is, I think, something that is more effective than complete desire or complete apathy, that middle ground.
Yes, absolutely. I did actually a 10-day residential camp purely to develop equanimity. That was the goal. That was the whole goal. Silence for 10 days, meditation to develop equanimity.
That is awesome.
It was awesome. It was quite the experience. And I think being aware, we all have that capacity for equanimity within us. Bringing it to conscious awareness first is important. So I would hope that your listeners would perhaps walk away thinking, what does that equanimity feel like? To feel like I am engaged, but not tied to the outcome. And one of the ways that we develop that equanimity is to have things like these preset rules that are set away from the heat of battle, that are based on logic and tie in appropriately with people's temperament and their goals or their vision.
And you've actually developed a diagnostic tool to be able to help investors uncover those hidden mindset patterns. Tell me more about your diagnostic tool and some of the surprising blind spots that this can help traders reveal.
Thanks, Louise, for bringing that up, because this is something that I am really passionate about, and that whole concept around knowing yourself and how critical that is, because if you understand what's going on beneath the surface, then you can do something about it. We can't change what we don't see. So having a diagnostic tool to uncover these things without you having to dig deep yourself is, my clients tell me has been really valuable. We've talked about some of these aspects which come up for people that we're not consciously aware of. Can't pull the trigger, for example, needing every detail to be perfect. Perhaps there's overconfidence. We don't know that until we complete a diagnostic, which, this has been carefully designed with psychological principles to ensure that people can see what are the things that they do well in terms of their mindset, what are the things that are development areas, so opportunities for further development, what are the threats to their equanimity and their equilibrium, and what are the opportunities? How can they actually capitalise on those strengths that they have? So, for some people, they might find that they are maximisers and they're trying too hard to move towards perfection. Other people end up oversizing their trades and not realising it's because they're too quick to act. Maybe they're impulsive, or they're overconfident, or this compulsive loss checking. That's a big one. People who are checking their P&L all the time. So every single small loss feels catastrophic. Once you can see these patterns in black and white, it really is quite liberating.
Tell us how we can get that diagnostic tool.
So in the notes, there is a link to that diagnostic tool, as well as Millionaire Investor Mindset, my organisation. So people are very welcome to check that out, do the diagnostic free of charge, and see what comes up for them. The good, the bad and the ugly, if you like.
Absolutely. So that website again is millionaireinvestormindset.com. So
right.
Linda, if you're going to put into a nutshell for us, what would be the first steps that somebody should undertake if they're looking to have that equanimity, that clarity, that ability to be a part of the matrix? What's your advice?
First step, understand yourself. So complete the diagnostic that you've got an opportunity to do so, or find some other tool, but make sure that you understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and so on. And then with that in mind, with your vision and your goals in mind, write your trading rules onto one page. Whether it's to do with entry, exit, risk size, timing, and then stick with it for 20 trades, no edits. And what that does is it forces you to act on logic instead of mood or fear. And then you can review how well you followed the process as well as your profit. And, you know, doing this is it's not the most exciting or sexy thing to be doing, but it is the fastest way to build your confidence and your consistency. So that's what I would suggest as a first step.
Linda, you are just a champion. I'm so happy to have you on the show and to know that we've got such a shared past with our degree that we studied together. The thing is that for the person listening, just know that Linda and I have your back. In our heart, we want you to excel in the markets, and we can see that future for you. So if you're having a difficult time tying into the matrix, tying into that heart that has to be in line with your head, you probably need some extra help. So we are here for you. And each week, I'm aiming to bring you the exact strategies and people that you need to connect with so that you can make great wads of money out of the share market. Any parting words, Linda?
We love that for you. And we want that for you. So, you know, both Louise and I definitely are conspiring for your success and really love to see the community thrive and prosper. And in this climate, in particular, in this market, there are so many opportunities if we get our mindset right. So I do urge people to give that some consideration along with their trading rules and how the two can really marry together so comfortably.
And if somebody hasn't told you today, I believe in you. I believe in your potential to excel in the markets. I can see the future, and the future is bright. And there are people far dumber than you that has made an absolute killing in the markets. So hang on to that true. And keep stay tuned to Talking Trading, because each week that is my exact aim for you. And until the very next episode, happy trading.